I would much rather have Dr. King's words be the heart of our service together on this Sunday of MLK Weekend rather than pull undue attention to my own words. So my reflection with you today will be relatively brief. Every time I read, or in this case listen to, the letter from a Birmingham jail, I am convicted anew, and every time it is by something a little bit different. And this time what convicted me is Dr. King's reflection on the creative use of time, which you will hear as our final clip today. Progress, Dr. King says in the letter, does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability. Time is no guarantor of progress. Time, Dr. King says, can be used creatively or destructively, but more often perhaps it could be allowed to flow idly by, which in the presence of systemic injustice is a different form of the destructive use of time. Justice too long delayed, Dr. King reminds us, is justice denied. The white moderate to whom Dr. King addresses his letter, today we would say the white liberal, is sympathetic, but lukewarm are the words he used. Lukewarm prioritizes order over justice, prioritizes comfort over tension, and is content to trust that progress will slowly roll in over time. And Unitarian Universalist congregations are certainly not immune to these tendencies. When Dr. King spoke to Unitarian Universalists in 1966 as the Ware lecturer at General Assembly, when he spoke to us in 1966, it was with great affection. He thanked us for our long tradition of supporting civil rights. He named the many particular Unitarian ministers and lay leaders who had supported him personally and his movement personally and directly. He counted himself as among friends with the UUs at that 1966 General Assembly. And simultaneously, he warned us in his speech, don't sleep through the revolution. Don't sleep through the revolution, he warned us, because he understood the temptation of the moderate or the liberal to trust in the flow of time, to trust in the slow wheels of inevitability, and so to fail to use time creatively, urgently, vitally, even in the presence of suffering and injustice that is ongoing. And so he called on us at that Ware lecture to experience what he called a divine discontent, that tension, a divine discontent. He called on us to be maladjusted to injustice, to racism and poverty and segregation. And out of that discontent, he called us to take strong action, to step into the creative, disruptive, transformative flow of time. It has been 57 years since that Ware lecture, a period during which Unitarian Universalists fought for racial justice, fought over racial justice, eased away from their commitment to racial justice at the national and the congregational level, and slowly found their way back to a sustained commitment to racial justice and to other anti-oppressive work. In the main, thanks to the courageous leadership and tireless efforts of several generations of BIPOC UU ministers and lay leaders. And time has been rolling on all the while. In 2017, at our National General Assembly, the assembled Unitarian Universalists, including delegates from this congregation, called on the UUA to begin the process of study that would lead to the adoption of an eighth principle. A new principle stating a clear anti-racist and anti-oppressive commitment for our congregations, understood to be the natural extension of our UU values and principles, but a commitment which needed to be explicitly stated. After several years, the UUA did eventually embark on that course of study, what is now called the Article 2 Commission, which has proposed a reimagining of all of our principles and which is expected to incorporate the eighth principle. It is good work. It has been slow work, and it is not guaranteed to happen at all. Meanwhile, congregations have not been content to wait for the wheels of the national machinery to turn, and so individual UU congregations all around the country have been adopting the eighth principle themselves at the level of the congregation, naming an explicit anti-racist, anti-oppressive commitment for their congregation. And UUI is one of those now several hundreds of congregations. In 2021, UUI voted overwhelmingly to adopt the eighth principle for our congregation. There is among our congregations a longing to step creatively into time. And meanwhile, there was also COVID. So back in May of 2021, when UUI voted to adopt the 8th principle, it seemed to me anyway that COVID was nearly over, right? The vaccines were becoming steadily available to the population. I was confident that after that summer, church life at UUI would be less disrupted by the course of the virus and resume something like its prior pace. We confidently reopened the campus in July of 2021, and then we closed it again in August of 2021. Because I was very wrong about this, as it turns out. We opened again in November, we closed again in January, we opened again in March, and this time the campus has stayed open, knock on all the things. And where has the 8th principle been during all of this time? Well, during this disrupted time, the UUI Board of Trustees chartered an 8th principle task force. The task force will have the purpose of assisting this congregation in turning your new commitment into action. There are some terrific people who have agreed to serve on this task force, and we still need a few more people to really launch it, and it would be a good thing to try and launch it by the spring. So if you are feeling some of that divine discontent to which Dr. King refers, and you are interested in serving on an 8th principle task force, please reach out to me by email or otherwise. I'd be happy to talk to you about what that would mean. And to this congregation, please support the work of this task force as it rolls out, because this is all of our work to do. And there's a related thing I want to raise awareness about. In 2022, UUI also launched a new team to help the congregation live into another serious commitment that it has, our commitment to be a welcoming congregation, fully affirming the worth and dignity and beauty of LGBTQ+ people, and celebrating the participation of LGBTQ+ people in the UUI community. Being a welcoming congregation is consistent with our commitment to the 8th principle. It is part and parcel of our commitment to the 8th principle, and it is the work of the entire congregation, not just the work of LGBTQ+ people, but the entire congregation. And the welcoming congregation team meets monthly. They will soon be launching their first big educational initiative, and they would love for you to join them and add your support. The info for the meetings is in the e-blast. Please come, join, and invite a friend. Now, I'm going to allow Dr. King to have the last word at our service today. And after we play the last recorded segment, which is brief, I will invite you to rise in body or spirit, and we will sing number 169 in your gray hymnal, which is We Shall Overcome. Now, We Shall Overcome, which became an anthem of the civil rights movement, is an adaptation of an African-American spiritual, which means when we sing it, we are entering into a sacred space that is not meant to be entered lightly. And it is incumbent on those of us who are not African-Americans to reflect on the complexity of that word, we, and to remember what it is that is being overcome. And then remembering Dr. King's words, that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, and that in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, no one is free until all of us are free. And then let us be grateful to enter into that creative flow of time together.